Good evening.
Okay, are we posting some
Live. Now, why is mine showing up there?
I guess people are finding us. Do we need to help direct people?
Well, Ben's snapping around and stuff. That's why.
I'll go.
All right. What you're showing on your screen, Ben, is showing up on our YouTube feed. So.
Oh, great.
It's
What
working.
you need to check is yours for me to see. When I click here. Are you now seeing the correct thing? Or are you seeing the notes?
You have to give it a minute.
Yes.
Now see, okay, it shows me presentation settings. So you
So
need
you
to
wanna-
do it in slideshow mode. Because it's showing the presentation side.
Is that better?
Give it a second.
I think that's how it works.
Yep. And that's it.
That's it.
Good.
That's good.
Yep.
Do we want the front lower so that they can see a little better, or is it not that?
Well,
I feel like
they're
it's
going to be
like-
seeing, well, they're going to see that on the screen, they're going to see the actual presentation with a side thing that just shows the speaker, a small
Oh, on there.
on there. So the lighting's for whatever people need here in the room.
Do you think there's a strong in the room preference between those two?
That's, and we don't have to darken this side, so that actually makes sense.
Yeah. That works for me.
Bring it back over.
And my goal is 15 to 20 minutes. I've cut it down from 90. So a couple of my students said, you're gonna come back and give us a full, 90-minute version. I said, I want.
We're both academics and how this works.
I'll tell you, it's been really nice.
They're that interested, they want to hear 90 minutes of it?
Listen, I don't know what it is,
Are
but
they
they're like,
trying to get out of something else?
listen, they were like, so how much extra credit? I was like, tell me about how good 90 minutes are again. They were like, oh, it's great. I love listening to you.
You know, extra credit can cause them to waste most of their life.
I can't. I decided this semester to do something fun. If they go to devotional, I feel weird about giving them extra credit. But if they set a habit of going to devotion, that feels a little bit more doable. So they have a tracker, they have notes and a selfie that they were there. And I think it's pretty great that they're spending about 13 hours over the semester for about 1% on their final grade. I feel really good about that trade. I actually think
Okay,
that's a
go
pretty
to
good.
Facebook and see if you can find this.
Okay, so now I'm on Facebook.
Yeah, they are happy.
And what I'll do is I'll close it here and you can monitor the YouTube screen. Yes, click on that.
Brian, is this gonna be the prime standing area?
There we go.
We're on.
Is this the prime standing spot
Mhm.
for the camera?
Yep.
We went black screen.
The student wants to hear class and street aid class, and they do a bunch of credit.
They should probably just have this muted on the side.
Oh, yeah, that's how I do it at church.
That makes you feel a little bit better.
Actually, I guess maybe we want to open YouTube back up on here. Because, go ahead, click, open the tab with YouTube. Because
I know.
then you can more easily answer questions on chat.
Okay.
It's so
Right.
funny.
Because they'll be right there in front of me or something.
Class with this. We're just assuming it's just
Should bring
things like
the law of it, yeah.
read education research lately. Have you seen how big the problems are? I feel pretty
Go
good
to-
about, if I'm hitting too hard,
Click on the
students get
studio
angry.
lines,
So I feel like yeah, it's hard, but they're getting.
go to your videos,
There's a lot of
go to
research
live.
out there.
And open that up.
That was happy. That was.
So the feed will come in through here,
That's,
right?
just click on that.
I'm just asking where are we gonna get the comments?
That's-
Here.
Just click on that. Click on the video link.
I'm
There you go. Okay.
Those change, others are here. Not because they have kids that want to enroll, but because.
Right there.
Okay, so that's what I'll come to.
Uh-huh.
And so that's just where I either respond to them or present the question to you.
TA graduate and now is.
All right,
You're with Iowa Virtual Academy. Which I think is really.
I love learning.
Welcome, come on in. Pick the best seats, they're still. open.
Yeah.
how are we gonna sound check this?
Oh, it was working earlier.
Meaning like,
Here, it was up on my phone and it was, I just turned the volume down for it.
are you getting? You're getting any of the volume?
You can hear it right there.
I'm just curious. I don't need to hear it. I just wanted to make sure that somebody is here.
Yeah.
Because I turned this down, so I don't.
Oh, yeah.
Egypt, that'll be, I'm right. That's how I'm gonna be.
We open and then we.
Go and then I can.
Like I had actually. Yeah, I shut it down. Maybe. So, yeah. But then I really. I had yeah, I'm going to get the I did not make it. Everybody. You did it in April. Sorry.
I mean, I guess, I think it has something.
Typically, there's somebody at the front desk.
There is down.
Jerry,
Just to.
So.
Okay. Or. Cheese. Where I, or what if, what do you look at? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. You don't mind. They're gonna go down to the great people for a few minutes. Hey, they're apparently doing that now in the hallway. Whatever you're doing.
Just hang it over your neck.
You did actually giving the now.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can stream. That way, if they say they're online watching, they know.
they're seeing this mainly.
Oh,
I can arrange that. How much time do you want before I give you one?
well, meetings for 15.
15 and 20, okay.
So when I do it.
I'll do that.
I think so.
Or no.
Okay. It's online. Well, welcome everyone. First of all, thank you all for coming out tonight. My name is Brent Mooring, and I'm a member of the founding group on this group of citizens here working together to get this charter school up and running in this area. And so we're grateful that you took the time to come and be with us tonight, and and especially also those that are online watching. We're glad you're with us. We have two great speakers lined up for us tonight. Ben Pacini, he's a professor of education at BYU, Idaho. He's going to talk to us tonight about the case for school choice. And then following his remarks, Ryan DeBell, he's a professor of chemistry at BYU, Idaho. Ryan is a member of the founding group for this charter school as well. He's going to speak specifically about the charter school, kind of giving you an overview of its mission and its fundamental philosophy and other aspects about it. And then after his remarks, we'll have some time for questions and answers about the school. We'd like to start. Now, this school that we're looking to start will be modeled after other schools that have already started in Idaho. There's an organization that we are partnering with called the American Classical Schools of Idaho. And they are an umbrella organization working to help create more of these classical charter schools in Idaho. And they currently have four of these classical charter schools up and running in Idaho. So we're hoping to be one of those as well. And so one thing we'd like to do to begin this meeting is have say the Pledge of Allegiance, usually at school board meetings, and just to give you a feel at this charter school, the students will say the Pledge of Allegiance every day to begin the day. And so we thought it would be appropriate for us to do that this time. We have a flag right here for us, so if you would join me.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And then the children at the school, right after reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, they would recite the school motto, which is, if I get it right, I will learn the true, I will do the good, and I will love the beautiful. I will learn the true, I will do the good, and I will love the beautiful. And that's kind of oftentimes you'll hear when people talk about classical education, the focus is on learning truth, goodness, good, and beautiful. So, well, without further ado, I will get out of the way and let Professor Piccini speak to us about the case for school choice.
Down that microphone back from you, ready, so okay. All right. I'm going to go down, this one up here. Well, I didn't know that they were going to start with one of my favorites, The Good, the True, and the Beautiful, and now I'm already a little bit weepy-eyed. And so I hope that you'll bear with me as I get emotional. Just hide this so it's a little bit better. My name is Ben Piccini. I am a professor at BYU. And today what I'd like to talk about is, before we get into the individual school, which I think that Brian DeBell and the folks on the founding team can speak to really well, there's often underneath a new school, a conversation actually already happening about school choice itself. Should we have just traditional public schools, or should we create lots of different models and have lots of different choices? This is an area of interest of mine. This is something that I've looked at a lot, and I feel like that's an important place to start. And so we're going to go through that for just one moment here. And hopefully that gives you a little bit of context. I'm going to frame this by giving you, if you'll think in your mind throughout this, imagine that there are 3 children. You've got a young boy who is excited and bookish and needs to be challenged. You have a young girl with a disability. And you have a slightly older girl who loves sports but isn't super into school. And you might be thinking, okay, what is the right school for them? Should they all go to a private school? Should they all go to a charter school? Should they go to a public school? And I want you to think about that question as I go through tonight. I'll try to come back to this at the very end with my quick answer. On my wall, on my door at school, I have a list of books that I love so much that I'm willing to give them away to students for free. And I run out of some of these pretty quickly. One of the ones that I really like is called The Beautiful Tree. The subtitle is A Personal Journey into How the World's Worst People Are Educating Themselves. It's by a man who described himself as a bit of a hippie, a Fabian socialist when he starts, and then he goes to build schools overseas and immediately learns that taking the American school model and dropping it into other countries has probably made things a lot worse in a lot of those other countries, or at least has cost a whole lot of money for not very much good. It is a fabulous book. I recommend it to anybody who wants to read it. And I talked to some people, by the way, who are very skeptical of private schools about the international reform efforts. And I think that they said it very well. It is not the case that everybody is excited about private schools and choice of charter schools. What is the case is now today, everyone admits that school choice is a part of the solution. And that was once not the case. I love The Beautiful Tree, and I think it's great. And here's part of why I think this is so important. One of the things that I like to have my students do is say, what's the one thing in education you would change? And every once in a while, I get a really sharp student who will at the end of the lecture say, what's the one thing you would change? And that's always very, very sneaky of them. And so what I say is, I'll tell you the truth, that there was one policy. Because you think about it, do I want better teachers? Do I pay them more? Do I have more nature education? Do I have, and there's all of a sudden dozens of possible things you could do. But now I'm giving up. I'm doing one, but I can't do the other 15. I need the one that breaks the dam. I need the one that allows all of those other innovations to happen. And that one is school choice. It isn't the solution. It's the solution that paves the way for the rest of the solutions to come to fruition. Let's say that you want teachers to be paid more. Great. Let's get away from big district contracts that require every single teacher to be paid the same. Let's allow some schools to pay more and some schools to pay less. And what you will find very quickly is that you will have a variation, and people, teachers and students and families will all choose what makes the most sense for them. What I am about is not the school type. What I am about is the system. So I'm going to just give a very short philosophical introduction here. A man named Friedrich Hayek explained this very simply. I'm going to give one of my favorite analogies. The analogy of this. Has anybody ever seen something like this? If you've ever walked on a university campus, I'm sure you've seen something like this. In fact, I've seen this. My favorite example of this is in the 60s, there was a university professor or a university president, excuse me, by the name of Dallin Oates, who stood up and said, would you please stop walking on the grass? We have a sign out that says, keep your bod off the sod. And you can hear him say this. This is on YouTube. It's very entertaining. People like to cut their own health. Cost a lot of money to replace all of that grass. Well, Friedrich Hayek made this observation. Maybe instead of doing this, where we cut the paths ourselves and assume that they're right, What if we don't cut any paths, see where people walk, and then make the paths right there? Because as it turns out, people are really efficient. They make really good decisions when they have all the information. So instead of thinking that we know best for everybody out there in cutting our own paths, what if we allow people to be educated to make the best decisions for themselves? The theory here is called spontaneous order. This is how we set prices. I teach economics occasionally, and I love talking about this. My students can't conceive of this idea. So who sets the price? That's the fun part. Nobody does. You go and you buy something, somebody else sells something, and there's an equilibrium price, and it's 1,000 actors and 1,000 sellers and 1,000 buyers, and there's not one central planning board. If you get nothing else of what I say tonight, I hope you get this. The individual wisdom of thousands of people is always superior to even the smartest, well-intentioned central planner. And what I say when I talk about school choice is that it doesn't matter how many signs you put out, the reason they are crossing the path and ruining the grass is precisely because they have found something that works better for them. Maybe there's a way that we can cut that path instead. I had to put Hayek up there as a little homage there, right? Fancy little mustache. Now, I think this applies to us too. Some of you might recognize this. Anybody know where that is? Where is that? Anybody? It is Roland's. Yeah, I love that place. Okay, what about this one? This one's a little less hard to guess. This is the Walmart, right? This has been a news article about how excited people were when a Walmart was opening. How do you think Roland felt when Walmart was opening? Interesting, right? Well, let's ask an even more pertinent question. How do all of you feel about this one coming? As it turns out, we all have an intuition that more choices are good. Does that mean you don't love Roland's? How dare you oppose Roland's by supporting Winco? How dare you support Walmart instead of Roland? Nobody talks like that. I go Walmart half the time. I go Roland's half the time. And when Winco gets here, it's going to be about a third, depending on what I need and how close I am. All of these make me better off. More choices are good for me, and they are good for you, and they're, by the way, good for the workers too. Because if they're getting a raw deal of one, they go to the other. That is better for everybody involved. And this basic idea that choices are good is probably the best thesis I have to offer for tonight's talk. Let's get into one last thing before I get too far. My kids go to Madison District Schools. We have been treated so well. We have been treated to teachers who love my kids, who are trying to do their very best by our kids. I hope that nothing that I say tonight could be in any way distorted to say that I don't think well of my Madison County school friends. We have partnerships with them in the education department. I think they are doing great work. Rather, I hope that what you hear is that choice benefits everyone. Yes, surprisingly, even Roland's. Even the public school districts are going to benefit from a charter school. And I'm going to lay that case out here over the next few minutes. I would not advocate for this if I believed that it would harm some in order to help some others. I do not believe in robbing Peter to pay Paul. Rather, I think that Peter and Paul will both be made better off in a regime of choice. In fact, I think I can even make the case that Madison might be made quite better off by everything that we are proposing here tonight. And let's see if I can make that. Last thing I need to say on this, I am faculty at BYU Idaho. This in no way represents the consensus view among BYU Idaho professors. To the contrary, I know several who would say, oh, that Bendicini is wrong about it. And that's great. And I know people who would say, oh, you need to go to your public school. Fantastic. Here's what I can say. BYU Idaho encourages us to be active members in our communities, to disagree well, but to disagree, and to have conversations, and to be good citizens, to stand up and try to make the world a little bit better. And it is in that context that I am here tonight. Nothing I say is anything other than my own opinion, but I am grateful for an employer who says, hey, you've got expertise, go and give that out to the community in the way that you see fit. And if somebody disagrees with you, they can raise their voice too. And that all of that is great. Okay, here are some things that we know. I'm going to try not to let you fall asleep. I am going to very quickly review some of the research on choice. It is scintillating, I assure you. At least I find it that way. So here is the shocking finding behind choice. The shocking finding behind choice is, it's mostly a snooze. There's not a lot that is exciting about school choice research. And I'll explain why that is. The first thing people said was, if you open up choice, bad things are going to happen. School districts will close. We'll go back into an era of segregation. The doomsday prophecies were pretty terrible. Here's some things specifically that have not come to pass. Racial homogenization has not occurred. There is no place in the United States. There are a few schools that are a little bit more homogenous. We can talk about that in a moment. But on average, there were discussions of we're going to have fully separated schools. It's going to be a big problem. That has not happened whenever we've had school choice. Number two, gap widening between wealthy and poor, or between black and white, has not occurred. Number three, public schools have not shut down. This is a very common argument. You are taking away money from public schools. I don't think I am, but if I am, it's because people are choosing a different option that works better for them. And frankly, I think that's the right thing that they should be able to do. But let's ask the more basic question. Do I think public schools are going to be decimated by school choice? It hasn't happened anywhere. Not one place has had school districts shutting down. There's nowhere left for public school teachers to go. That simply has not happened. On the other hand, the glorious utopia of school choice has also mostly not come to pass. This is not the thing that has all of a sudden changed the world and everybody's in a private school and happy. Specifically, wide, large-scale academic gains where every kid has 150 IQ has not occurred. Number two, significant shifts away from public schools, as I already mentioned, have not occurred. Number three, gaps have actually closed, but they haven't disappeared between some. The frank reality is that school choice draws immense attention, is highly controversial, but most of the time the effect size is pretty small in the research literature. I'm not going to go through every single one of them. I want to mention these two graphs at the beginning. This is by the way from Q. They're really great with data. This is the percentage of students in the three big blocks: private, charter, and public. If anybody thinks that private and charter are going to take over the world, I haven't seen it happen. Even in the very, very pro-choice areas, that is just not the reality. This is one that we can talk about. This is racial demographics. There are more white kids in private schools, but interestingly, charter schools tend to be a lot more diverse on average. Or I guess one way to say that is, in some areas, there are actually a lot of people of color in those schools because they feel like they can make the choice and get a better education. I'm going to skip a lot of this. It just kind of reinforces what I said a moment ago. A lot of things that people prophesied have just not happened. There are some things that are really cool. This is from 2001. I don't think I am cherry picking. I think there are a lot of bright spots. Black students across 4 different voucher systems came out doing significantly better than their peers. There are reasons to believe that school choice has made a difference. By the way, and I'm happy to make all of this available. I've got links. I don't want to go over it too in depth now. There are a lot of shining gems that you can see when you look through the literature. And there are also some examples where things have not gone so well. We can talk about those too, if we have time. This is another one. This is percentage of parents giving school an A. One of the most consistent findings in choice. It's not test scores. Test scores do not always go up. Typically, I have plenty of examples where they do. I also have some examples where they've gotten worse. I've got some where they've stayed flat. Most of them, it's pretty small. It just doesn't do much at all. But the one overwhelming finding is that parent satisfaction goes through the roof. And I like that because I don't think it's all about test scores. I don't think it's all about discipline. I think what captures that the best is that the parent knows. They know about the discipline. They know about the test scores. They know about all the things, and they say, this is the right school for my child. That to me is a really key number. And a lot of people will agree, even if they don't like school choice, that is consistent in the literature. This is just tables of more information that basically say what I just said, so I'm going to skip over those. There is one exception on the snooze fest, and that's one of my most favorite things about snooze fest. I like to ask my students this. I want you to imagine here's your typical public school, your traditional public school, and here's a charter school. So let's imagine you've got a pretty typical community. You've got 3 traditional elementary schools. And now, down the way, in another county, you've got a charter school or a private school. Which one is better? They always want to know. Which one is better? Is it private schools? Is it charter schools? Or is it, which one is it? I said, you're thinking about it all wrong. There are plenty of terrible private schools. There are plenty of terrible charter schools. That's not the question. As it turns out, charters and publics, on average, do about the same. Private schools do a little bit better, but that's complicated. There's wealth involved. There's a lot of stuff that private schools can do that others can't. Here's what is consistently found in the research. What is consistently found is that when I drop another school type in there, now all 4 of them do a little bit better. When I said that this could be better for Madison, this is exactly what I mean. I didn't say pleasant. Competition isn't fun for anybody. I don't think that Walmart is lobbying for WinCo again. But I think 10 years from now, Walmart will be better and more efficient and more thoughtful about how they do their operations. Because if they don't, they will be out competed. I can keep talking about this. That's just a long paragraph that says what I just said. An interesting thing in the research is it's not the coming of vouchers and private schools. It's even the threat of a voucher. When there is the threat of choice, all the schools involved start fighting just a little bit harder to keep their kids. They market better, they teach better, they do all the things. And this is a very consistent finding. By the way, effect sizes are small. We're talking about 1%. We're talking about very small differences between traditional schools, between schools with very little choice and schools with a lot of choice. Now, I should note that this is contextual. I want you to imagine that you're in a rural community that only can support one school. You can drop a charter in there, it's not going to work. It has nothing to do with the charter. It has to do with the fact there's just not enough demand to run 2 schools. When you only have 1 school in a rural area, having more schools doesn't actually make all that much difference because they can't support multiple schools. A lot of our kids are in rural areas, so that's some of the context on competitive effects. Having said that, more choices tend to be good. Okay, when I said that this could benefit Madison rather than hurt, I have heard rumor. I have not talked to anybody at Madison County. I would love to talk to Superintendent Lords or anybody else, but I have heard rumor that we are growing like gangbusters. And it would be a lovely thing to have another elementary school because our schools are just growing. Here's a very simple way that this could help us. If we have a new school in the area that can absorb a little bit more of that enrollment, it gives everybody a little bit more time. That could be a really easy next 5-10 years kind of a decision that could benefit everybody. What about teachers? Well, here's the great thing. When teachers are locked into only one contract, we have a name for that in economics. It's called a monopsony. Its cousin is a monopoly. You can imagine all the happy good things and the Mr. Monopoly monocle. These are not things that we like. When we have lots of choices and lots of opportunities, teachers can say, ooh, I can work over at that school for just 1 shift until 12 p.m. and I get paid less, but that's way more flexible for my family. Those are the kinds of options that I am talking about that could be really good. The more options there are for teachers, the better it is for them. And perhaps the most important for me, there are some kids that are unsuccessful, not because of them, but because of the way the school is set up. I would love to see more options for those kids. Some are unsuccessful because they need more rigor. Some are unsuccessful because they are bored. Some are unsuccessful because they need a little bit more interaction and engagement. Some could really use an art school. The point is that the more options you have, the successful schools tend to do better, they replicate and grow. The unsuccessful schools tend to realize pretty quickly and they have to turn it around or they have to close their doors. Last thing I want to talk about, zip codes. And I think I've got about 3 more minutes, so I'll try and wrap up quick, about 5, okay. I want to talk about zip codes. This is where, to me, it becomes a justice and equity issue. I am careful to invoke that because I think people sometimes use that for political ends in ways that we've got to be careful about. My background is I taught in Baltimore City for 6 years, and then I was an assistant principal in Washington, D.C. for 4. The school that I worked at that is by far the whitest is BYU, if I can say it that way. I love BYU. I love my schools in Baltimore. I love my schools in D.C. And one of the things that I always had a hard time with is you would see a school that had been failing for generations, for 40, 50 years, and they were still open, and they were still taking enrollments, and very little had changed over time. There are a number of economists who have found that zip codes, unfortunately, have become destiny in some way. That if we know where you're born, that actually tracks with your life outcomes in terms of career and a lot of other stuff. I'm here to say that it doesn't have to be that way. When you think about zip code, what is that proxy for? What's proxy for a lot of stuff is it turns out we tend to live with people or near people that are like us. So we segregate on our own in terms of race or religion or other things. But one of the best examples, of course, is the zip codes determine where we go to school. In I should argue this just really quickly. I am not here to suggest privatization. One of the things that bugs me a little bit is when people say, you want to privatize education. No. Let me clarify what that would mean. That would mean that we shutter all of our public schools, that we do not subsidize in any way any schools at all, that we remove the government entirely. There are no regulations. There is no money going towards schools. What I am advocating is that public schools continue and that anyone who wants to can choose where to send their money. And if the public school is great, then the public school will continue doing great because a lot of parents will choose that. And if the public school is not meeting their needs, then they can go to a charter or a private or wherever else they would like to go. I also believe in more options for everyone. So I can't remember how many years ago it was, but probably 50 plus years ago, there was a practice among financial institutions called redlining. Redlining means if you're in this area of the city, we're not going to lend to you. We're not going to give you any financial support. You're not going to get a loan. And the banks dressed this up as we're going to do this. You can see here, these are the best places to lend. You can still go here. These are declining, and then in red it says happy. And those red areas are places we are not going to lend to. And in their minds, they were, I don't know, I haven't interviewed them, but I would imagine that many of them thought they were doing the right thing. We're going to protect our institution by making sure we don't give access to what we are doing to certain people who might be a higher risk. There's pretty good evidence that this has not turned out very well. I've heard a prominent school choice activist mention that he believes that this is educational redlining. Let me explain the educational piece. All of these in here, the Google search this morning, is your zip code destiny? And everybody argues about this, and they say yes. What's one of the biggest parts that is determined by your zip code? It's where you enroll in school. I don't have a lot of time, but I picked a few of my favorites. Here is Ogden School District. You see that right in the middle? And then on the outside is Weber. Why does it look like a donut? Look at the next one. There's Ogden. There's Weber. Look at the next one. This is LA. There's LA. See the donut? What's the donut hole? Actually, in this one, it's almost reversed. That is Beverly Hills Unified School District. Yes, it is. Yeah, that's it. Okay, let's look at the next one. It's Cache County. See the donut? And there's Logan. Logan is a different school district in Cache County. And you see this over and over and over again. And the premise of public schools is we serve all. We take all comers, except that if you're from certain zip codes, we'll put you in a different district. Here's the one that's personal to me. Anybody know that one? You can read it at the top. That's Baltimore County. If only we had a little peg fit that size. Oh wait, there it is. It's Baltimore City Public Schools. If zip codes are destiny, why do we set up where kids go on the basis of the zip code? Or where they go to school on the basis of their zip code? I take issue with that on a moral basis. I think the family should get to choose. And if they know they're headed for a school that has been a disaster for decades, let's try to change that. A couple of quick quotes. School choice offers the potential to break the link between housing and school quality, increasing equity. Eric Henshek's great. Simply spending more on schools without changing the incentives is unlikely to improve outcomes. School choice introduces incentives that can. Caroline Hawksby is great, a researcher. School choice is not a panacea. It does not fix everything, but it improves achievement, particularly when schools must compete for students. Competition among schools improves outcomes for students in both public and private sectors. And now let's go back to our 3 children. What school should they go to? Here's the beauty of it. I have no idea because I'm not smart enough, because I'm not there. And some of these 3 will undoubtedly choose a great public school. More power to them. And some of them might consider a charter school. Wonderful. And some of them might choose a private school. To make it personal just for a moment, that one in the middle is not. The other 2 were made by AI. One in the middle, it's actually my sister. She had great teachers who loved her a lot. Boy, I wish she had had a few more options. I think it could have been just a little bit better. Happy to answer questions afterwards. Thank you all for listening, and I will turn it over to Ray.
Good, thanks to Dan. Well, I'm sorting out one thing to the other. You might wonder why. Is it showing the red? Yes. Is that showing the red? There is.
They're changing.
Right now. So you might wonder why we had
Showing presenting mode.
Ben's not necessarily.
Presenting mode showing.
It should fix itself. Well, on our team. But that's okay. Because I think it was an important message. And what we hope to do here is probably try and, as Ben was saying, add something to the conversation. So that we can consider things that might be good for your person, your child, whatever might work best for your situation. So what I want to introduce here is an idea of practical education. And that word has a lot of meanings, so we'll try and slow that down a little bit better. But part of it, I should actually, before I get to the rest of it, I'm going to kind of do what Ben did, give my little disclaimer. Mention that the ideas I have are my ideas. They are not the ideas of my employer, which happens to also be Ben's employer. They aren't necessarily the ideas of American Classical Schools of Idaho. We hope to partner with, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. And in fact, they might even represent the rest of my group. Okay, they're my ideas, all right? Fair enough? Okay, let's go. So, we'll mention these folks briefly here. American Classical Schools of Idaho has been, Brent was mentioning earlier, is a building budding network of this type of school that we're going to talk about. They currently have one school that's been up for about 6 years in Treasure Valley, one that starts this fall in Eagle, near Boise, and then 2 that are starting in 2026. And then we hope to be on the list in 2028. So that's kind of, if you want a timeline, that's kind of the whole thing. We'll talk more about that at the end. So yes, we're aligned with American Classical Schools of Idaho. We've become a formal member of that group once we've met their application requirements. That's something that we'll talk about again when we get to the end. But first, kind of introduce what we mean by this whole thing. Why? I think, you know, a lot of people, when they start talking about a new school, they start asking, great, what are you going to teach? I think we need to back up. Why are we going to teach it? I think that's really what we ought to ask first. So I turn to, if you go to ACSI's website, find a lot of nice things there, and there's something here that we kind of agree with the vision statement. I'll take it to this part. What's the vision of building a classical school? To form future citizens who uphold the ideals of our country's founding and promote the continuation of American government through a classical, great books curriculum. Now, what that means, we'll get into. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. Now, what is that for? That's designed. The purpose of doing that great books curriculum and focusing on the American founding is to engage the student in the highest matters and deepest questions of truth, justice, virtue, and beauty. Okay, we mentioned here that the school slogan was, or the school pledge that's given in the mornings after the pledge of allegiance. Is you're staring at me, I'm going to forget it. I will learn the truth, I will do the good, I will love beauty. Right? And so truth, goodness, beauty, that's a lot of the focus. And really it has to do with building that inside the student. One thing that we try to focus on is the idea of what happiness is. If you talk to Aristotle, happiness is a certain activity of soul in accord with complete virtue. Okay? So in order to have happiness, according to Aristotle, nice guy, you should read more. But in order to have happiness, according to Aristotle, virtue is tied to that. So that really ties into what we're trying to do with this school here. Another thing that kind of comes from the Greeks is the word character. Character comes from the Greek, parasol, which also meant to engrave, to inscribe, to etch. Okay, so when you really were talking about carousel, we were talking about sketching something in, driving it in so it's permanent. That's what we mean by building character. Okay. The school's motto is in Latin. Okay, virtus, scientia, and veritas. And I think probably we're going to put a little video here that I think will help explain what that means and how it pertains to building up a student. Because the character comes first, the why comes first. You know what the why is, then we understand why it is that we're studying certain things. Then the what makes sense. Let's talk about why first. So let me open this here real quick. That showing up there properly? Sorry. So here we go.
Changing. Okay, we'll try it again. We're not getting any.
My name is Steve Lambert, and I'm the principal for Treasure Valley Classical Academy. In some sense, classical education is still relevant because they're still human beings. Because in the end, I think classical education is about human formation and helping, in the American sense, young children grow up to be citizens in a free society. And classical education would be the education benefiting the citizens of a free society. But if you permit me to use a metaphor and combine that with our school motto, I think it's a fuller explanation of that. If you think about forming things, or perhaps building human beings, and then you use the metaphor, you use the motto, which is Virtus Scientia Felicitas, appropriately Latin with a classical school. When you build a building, the first thing you put in is the foundation. The foundation is virtus, or translated character. I think Booker T. Washington once said that character is power. And James Madison wrote in Federalist 55 that unless we have citizens of virtue and knowledge, we'll lose our republic, directly addressing character or virtue. But a foundation doesn't make a building. We have to put walls and structure and windows, in other words, content. In our motto, that is scientia, or knowledge, and in our case, deep, rich knowledge. But you're missing something in the building, and that is the roof, the highest point, that thing which is the most noble. And in our motto, that is felicitas, translated into English as happiness. I always pause at this point in our modern society to say that's not the thing that results from the pursuit of pleasure, but rather that the contentness, deep contentness, perhaps you might say joy, that comes from a life well lived. And you might never get there. It's almost ethereal, you're stretching for it. But we would like the students to start out that way. So in the end, our students will learn the true, they will do the good, and they will love the beautiful.
So that good. Virtue for character, then the content, the knowledge, and then the habits. So it's specific order and think it matters. Okay, so hopefully that explains the why. Okay, now the what is coming, but before the why, after the why, I think actually comes the how. Okay, and a good thing that helps describe what I want to get into is something called 10 key characteristics of a classical school, classical education. You can find this on ACSI's website. Probably the easiest way to find it is Google American Classical Schools Web. It's ACS-ID. I guess ACS actually take it. So, okay. American Classical Schools Web. You Google that, find it. They'll have these 10 characteristics, but you'll notice I don't quite have them in order. I'm starting actually with number 6. Okay. We'll get to number 1, don't worry, but I want to start with, I think it's important. Number 6, you'll notice they have here an approach to instruction that acknowledges objective standards of correctness, logic, beauty, weightiness, and truth. In other words, our search for truth is searching for something that doesn't change. Maybe our understanding of it changes over time. I teach science. Science, we often notice that over the course of time, we understand things a certain way based on the way we observe nature. But when we start observing new things, that may change the way we understand them. That didn't change the thing. That's always been the same. But our understanding of it may change. I think it's very important that we approach education from the standpoint that there is a truth that's always the same and it doesn't change. And that's what we're searching for. There may be different ways to search for it. The scientific method, logic and deduction, studying the human condition through great literature. But we're looking for that thing. And if you don't start with that as the foundation, and instead of having an objective reality, you have a subjective reality. And that doesn't go very well. We start thinking we create our own reality. That's not what we do. So I think that's important that that's actually where we start. Okay. After that, we have some things here. A well-educated and articulate faculty who use traditional teacher-led methods of instruction. Now, when we say teacher-led, we don't mean somebody standing up in front and boring the students by talking all the time. But we do mean that the agenda of the classroom is set by the teacher. There are certain things that we should cover, and we're going to make sure those things are covered. But how that's done for every particular classroom may change depending on the needs of the student and the needs of the class. Okay? But it is still led by a competent and well-educated system. That's who needs to move a little bit. And then I skipped 10 here. A school culture of virtue, decorum, respect, discipline, and studiousness. So yes, we do have a bit of decorum. We do have uniforms. We do have requirements of treating people with respect on both sides, teachers and students. Right? We're here to do serious things. We're here as part of the team. We're all working together. So that's part of the how. Okay? If now we can go to the what a little bit, and at least look at the first three things here, and these are all kind of linked. You'll notice we have something about where the content is located. It's primarily in math, science, literature, and history. That doesn't mean we don't touch other things. I think art and music is very important. Certainly part of this. But math, science, literature, and history kind of make the core, and then we build things around that. All of these things kind of focus on that truth we were talking about. How do we approach it? Do we approach it through logical deduction? That would be math. The scientific observations, science. We approach it through studying the human condition, that's literature. Or the way people have acted in the past. There's your history. And the students will work on those things through the years. And then we can look at how other things built into that. How did your art design, how did your art and music change over the years? Because of change, because of. And how do they all tie together? So that's the important thing. We focus on the Western tradition and the idea of philosophy and political foundations that led to the American founding because of where we live. And because the American experiment is kind of unique in history. And it's worth perpetuating, we think. And so that becomes an important focus of the class. In terms of a curriculum, you'll see this come out, for example, for grades K through 5, half the year is spent studying American history each year. The other half would be on various parts of world history or ancient history or whatever it is, right? You might see this reflected in a 2-year U.S. history sequence, 7th and 8th grade, instead of 1. You might see this in the high school where there's a particular year-long class on moral philosophy, so that we understand the philosophical underpinnings that led to the American. Why does the Declaration of Independence say we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal? Where did that come from? Well, that's where you get into that and understand philosophy. So all those are kind of tied together, right? Now, as a part of that, we do kind of the reason why we do that. I've got this little illustration up here, it's about getting a PhD, which is kind of a weird thing to put in a presentation like this. I mean, it shows this thing where some guy's reaching out to the edge of known knowledge until he finally breaks through, and that's PhD. That's when you found new knowledge, something nobody else knows, at least for the next few months. Okay. That's the idea. But for this class, for this tool, for K through 12, actually, that little red thing on the edge there, that's not really what we're focused on here. What we're focused on here is that part. By the time you finish high school, it's the center part that we should be really solid with. Well, if we don't have some things in common when the students are studying, we don't have a solid foundation on that center part. So for example, if we have a cafeteria model, which allows a lot of electives at high school, that means that our students are primarily getting a common foundation in some very fundamental things. And that's the goal. Right? So where do we choose to put electives? That doesn't mean there aren't any electives, but that does mean that we choose to be judicious about the electives and make sure that the important things are centered to everyone. So we all have a common experience. So we all can talk with each other. So we all, again, start to understand where did this American experiment come from? It comes from that center. And so that's one of the reasons why we focus on these core disciplines of math and science and literature. Okay. All right, so now there is something about language, of course. It's very important. You'll notice we have here one of the tenets that is required an explicit instruction in phonics and grammar in the early grades, and also the study of Latin. Okay, language matters. We all need to understand how we do this. So how do we do this? Well, in the early grades, we start with phonics. What do we mean by explicit phonics? Well, we mean understanding this. These are the 72 phonograms in the English language. That is, letters or groups of letters that make specific sounds. Okay? And if you're an adult, you've grown up with this, you've sort of figured out by this point how those all work. When you starting out reading, you need to learn what those groups of letters are and what sounds they make. Sometimes that can be difficult because sometimes there are different groups of letters that all make the same sound, right? Like, for instance, here we have A, and A. That can make it a little confusing, okay? So rather than having students looking at passages and things, now certainly read things together with parents, read things together with teachers, but we focus on what are these groups and what sounds do they make. And if you look at our curriculum here, after during the first time, kindergarten grade, for example, we focus on all these phonograms, so that in the early grades, in the first grade, you learn what the combinations are, you learn what sounds they make, and then you can decode text. That is powerful. 26 letters in the alphabet is kind of random to think about. But when you start looking at the groups that make specific sounds, now that's powerful. And that's what we mean by explicit phonics. What about this Latin thing, or other languages for that matter? You know, we don't just do the Latin. Starting in K-5, we usually have some Spanish. That's very, very useful, especially in an area like this, the agricultural community, where we do have a lot of Spanish people. Maybe we should learn how to talk. We've got Latin starting in groups at grade 6. And there's nothing like learning a second language that forces you to learn your own. Because in order to make correlation between routine parts of speech, grammar, syntax, you have to understand your own language really well to start making sense of what the other one means. So that's what the Latin study is for. So we spend 3 to 4 years on that. And then there's a modern foreign language in the high school. Okay, usually French or Spanish. Sometimes students choose to go and do more Latin. Okay, we do that. But there's always another language because you understand your own better when you see it in the context of another. So if you've learned a second language, you probably know this if you've seen it. All right, now we're going to hit the last couple of things we haven't seen in this list of 10. One of them is this commitment to use technology effectively without diminishing faculty leadership. Now, what does that mean in practice? Well, it means some pretty simple things, I think. Let's leave the cell phones on. They're a distraction. Okay. So no cell phones, not breaks, no lunch, no nothing. It's okay. If parents need to call, they can call the office. Usually we won't use computer class. Now maybe in the upper grades, they might use it to type a report. Okay, we might use it to search for information to do some research. But oftentimes the discussions in class don't require that. They require us using brain power and not electrical. Okay. And then usually we try to avoid calculators. Well, math is primarily about logic. It's not about getting the right number. So we focus on that. And then we learn how to use the calculator as a tool rather than a okay. Brent here, Professor Mooring, teaches the math department. So he can tell you something about calculators and they're good as bad. Okay. So yeah, technology is a tool, not a crutch. But this doesn't mean we throw all technology out the window. But we're very careful about choosing what's good to use. We use that. So, the last thing I'm going to leave you with. How do we make this work? Okay. We could have discussions like this, and this could remain a discussion thing in perpetuity. Or we could make this happen. There are if you saw the old movie Field of Dreams, some of us are old enough to remember that. If you aren't, you should go look it up. Pretty good. Okay. It's about a guy who gets this impression that he's got to build a baseball field in back fields. So he builds the baseball field. One of the things he gets from like the spirit guide and the whole thing is that if you build it, they will come. Right? The movie ends with a line of cars coming to see the baseball field. That's kind of the wrong thing to think about this. It's not if you build it, they will come. It's if you come, they will build it. So our partnership with ACSI depends a lot on community demand, which we need to demonstrate. First way we can demonstrate that is by having people who can help us with community founding group. We have a good group right now. We have myself, we have Rubush here, Brent Mooring, we have Christina Horrocks, we have Brent, Jared, I was gonna call you Jeff, sorry. Jared Gibbons here, okay? We could use 3 or 4 to 5 people else to help out. Okay? This does, in the charter school world, provide you a bit of a benefit. Charter school enrollments actually happen by lottery. So when the charter schools come out, all the people who have signed up get put in the lottery system, and then the assignments are made by lottery. Those who participate in the founding group get preferred status in the lottery. So there is an incentive to it. There are other things about that. If you have questions about the lottery, I know most of what goes on with that. You can talk to me about it afterwards. Help with that. Okay, but that's the first thing we can use to help in kind of keeping the group going. Okay? It kind of keeps the thing going. The second thing we need to look at is public support. This is found in something called intent to enroll, or an ITE they call it. Okay? Our current list of ITEs is 227 students. Over 100 families in this community, people like your families, have decided they'd like to join us with this effort. They've signed this intent to enroll. And then time to enroll is non-binding. It doesn't guarantee you a spot. It doesn't require you to join. But what it does show is it shows the Idaho Charter School Board that there is interest for this school. And that's one of the requirements to build the charter. You have to demonstrate community interest. So we're currently at 227. Our goal this year is to get to 400. Because when we get to 400, we can start serious development, meaning sticking shovels in the ground, stuff like that. Our goal at opening is 750 students. So there's a long way to go, but we're already doing pretty well so far. So we could use your help in finding those people. Okay. In addition to your family, maybe we're looking for your friend's family, we're looking for other families. We're willing to say, yes, I'd like to see something like this, I'd like to see additional options. Okay. This kind of ties to that last one, I left this off until the very end, because it kind of ties to this. By the time we open, we will open and then we'll be grades K through 12. It would start at K through 7. And then we'd add a grade on every year until it gets to K through 12. So that's kind of how it grows. Right? So eventually it'll serve grades K through 12. Land. The second thing we need is a place for the school. Okay, we are in talks with someone. We're not in a place where we can announce anything, but we are very hopeful that it's going to find through. But we could be all hopeful. We should also plan for things not so hopeful. So we are looking for a backup site. If we're familiar with development area, if you're familiar with people who are building, if you're familiar with people who have land, we'd love to talk to them. Okay, so I'm talking to everybody here, and I'm talking to everybody on that camera right there that I'm talking to. Okay. If you have information about this that you'd like to share with us, that we could go and pursue those options, we would appreciate pursue those options. One of the things that land does, in addition to providing a spot to take a school building, is it also provides a way of having the needed capital to the value of the land, to then raise the money that's necessary to build the school. Unlike school district, charter schools may not levy or bond. Okay, we can't raise your property taxes to build something. We just have to get it put together. And while the state does provide for operational expenses of the school, that happens once the school's up and running and people are actually being educated. So to get the school in place requires money up front and requires that piece of land. So that's what we're looking for. So your help in finding this would be very helpful. Okay. And then the last thing comes, we join our group here. ACSI is kind of a federation. It's not, although ACSI has a board, it's not the typical school board. It's more of like the United Federation of Planners, if you want to think of it that way. Okay, each school operates independently. There are some common things. They all use the common curriculum. They all may choose to do some things in common because it makes sense on an economy of scale. So, like all the schools may choose to pitch money together and take care of transportation from a central hub. And one entity picks all the bus lines up the bus, things like that, right? One entity in the middle might help with the school lunch programs. But otherwise, individual schools decide individual things. Each individual school leader decides to open or close school because of snow or whatever. Each individual school leader works with individual families. Okay? So it's more of a federation and less of a board. Represent our group. Once a school is started here, one member of our founding group would then be chosen to join the board. And that person, along with our school leader, would represent our school in the board's interest. So there is, again, principles of federalism at work. Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking at. To how this may become a reality, we really look at these two things: building up our support and having a place to land. And your help in that could be very helpful. Okay, and then we go from there. So, if you would like to know more about this, we have our website, Teton River Classical Academy. One very long word, .org, or our email. You can send us email, Teton River CA, Teton River Charlie Alpha at gmail.com. Okay. And we'll answer questions there. We will have things on our website, including an intent to enroll form for those who are watching this online. You can use that. If you're interested in showing support for this effort, we have intent to enroll forms right here to fill out for your family. Okay. So that's about all I have. what I'm gonna do, rather than stand here and answer questions, but I'm gonna come around and then just talk, and we'll have questions and answers. And if you want to go back and ask any questions, I'm sure he'd love to talk to you too. But we'll just make this sort of an open house thing at this point, okay? We've got refreshments in the back, like nosh on something. We've got more information about curriculum and the intent to enroll forms over here on our little info table. We have a QR code, if you'd like to look at the website. Okay, so thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it. Thank you, those of you who tuned in online, and we hope to hear from you as well. Okay, all right, thank you. Please come to the back of the room and get some refreshment. Yeah, we really don't want to take all that home. Yeah, we'll have some drugs.
Morning, Bernie. Any questions? Put out there, you're welcome.
How many do we have at the time? 4?
Or you probably want to.
2 of them was us.
Yeah.
So there were 2 out there. I think what will happen is we'll get another people who will watch it later.
It's gonna be hard, because social media.
Yeah.
Take it, put it out there.
Yes. 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 In fact, our next event is at the end of the month. We're going to the Fisherman's Breakfast in St. Anthony.
Oh, okay,
So we could use some help there.
okay.
In fact, I have, did I bring it? Oh, I left it. I had a whole form set up to fill out. And then we were really worried about getting everything set up. So what we'll do is we'll just take a back of a page here. We'll-
Okay,
Let's just collect names.
okay,
That'd be great.
But if we have that event, then we've also done too, like 4th of July.
Yeah, so our big events this summer
County fair.
are the
Yeah.
county fair, 4th of July.
I think I talked
Yeah, maybe.
at the fair.
But those are
last
the
year.
3 big events, but we're also gonna try and do some smaller things out front of some of the big stores, so out front of Rollins or out front of Walmart. Okay, and just sort of catch people as they're coming in or out. We tried that a couple times, we did a trial run at California. And it was colder, so it didn't
Yeah.
work so well, it was cold. But we did get good discussions. And so slowly, if we get 2 people at a time having discussions, that'll make a difference. But yeah, in order to do it, we're discovering that we're to the point where we're sort of maxed out. As a half a dozen of us.
Yeah,
So yeah, so more people, even if it's, I can't do everything, but I can come help you on a day or 2.
yeah,
Yes, awesome.
yeah. Cause I'd like to be able to help. I think that my foot.
Yeah, let's make it,
Over the.
let's make
Yeah.
So you can-
Folks, one other thing. You never remember everything when I'm talking. We have here just a volunteer sign. Let's say that you just taxed out right now, you can't help out with everything that a group, somebody in the founding group would be doing. But you can help for an afternoon at some event booth where we're handing out flyers and taking things like that. If you could do that, we would love to have you on the list where we can send you a phone call and say, hey, we're doing a thing for Fisherman's Breakfast. By the way, we're doing a thing for Fisherman's Breakfast. And if you'd like to help out with that, we'd love to have your help.
Okay, and you can be there for a couple of hours with us. That gives you a chance to talk to us in more depth than you could ask questions.
Yeah.
And you get to see what we're trying to do, right? So yeah, if you can help out with that, we got this right over here. I suppose we should be nice. Yeah. There are a lot of. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So you are gonna do it.
I still remember.
Right, yeah, yeah.
No questions on that.
My name is Okay. Yeah.
Hey, Ryan. Ryan. Maybe you know, do I just close out YouTube or do I have to do anything special?
Uh,
Sometimes it doesn't allow us to turn it on. Okay. Put a pause on it at least. Blah, blah, blah. Well, that's at least pause. We're still. All right, we have 5 minutes. Let's, see if we can get support for starting the start. Yeah, okay. Well, we needed that.
Yeah, I'll check that.
Say that. Yeah, I will. Not everybody. Great job. But I'm shocked. Nobody's trying to make it. The work with it, but I would love to do something with a little bit. Yeah, we got. I think so. They ended up being pretty. I think that ended Don't do that. Firing and that's really very, really practice. Right, the number really, you were just like.
Good job. God.
Well, I mean, again, back
Yeah. Yeah.
On one hand, you're gonna bring all the kids and feel them, and then in the next,
What you don't want to get in any argument that feels good for you. Give them an opportunity to place it in. They're learning a lot of it. Fast. I mean, my impression of higher ed. And I think there are a lot. I also think there's more like that, not just I, so. Yeah. If I. One example, I'm not.
Like, I mean,
not
we're
involved in
other
team. I.
Yeah.
We're doing those types of homework.
Like,
Help them use that word. For the part. Well, it's a pleasure. I think I'm gonna pass it. But I'm really for the whole question. All right. Yeah. So 15, but but I am not. Really, I think it's fine. Oh, yeah. Sure. Hey, when you grew up to be as old as your dad is, yes. Like, oh, what? Oh, our website? Well, my website is online. You're welcome to check that out. I can submit it. That's. And your dad, I mean, you know, that's, there's also the front of that,
yeah.
All of them should work. All right, we're gonna, you have some kids to go to take care of, and I gotta put you kids to bed.
Yeah, that means we need to gather up as well.
I love little sushi bees too, that's a great thing. Good to go on that way, so that.
We just wanted to things.
No, no problem. Was that okay? Yes. That was helpful for you? Yeah, thank you much. That was. I don't normally get to give my own opinions. Yeah, I've got my other curriculum in the team. That was good to say. You're told that. So that was fun. Y'all enjoyed it? Well, it's good to have all of you. Have fun. Good luck.
Take care of you. We'll get something to work. Yeah. Maybe that's something you would. Melinda, you know what? We're all Lindy. By default, you may be the one who start thinking about it. What I'll do is remind you. So I have two things I need to do to figure out that. One is to make up the volunteer sheet for the event. And the second. I was looking for Melinda. Oh, but. Thank you. I came all the way back. Archiving the video. Oh, yeah, there you go. Just start playing.
I'm trying to figure out now.
Great.
Hey. It's actually, we're not.
Can you explain how you're incorporating AI into the case? For K through 12, we're not. I think that's a great thing to learn in college. I'd like to. I don't have a little too smart.
Give the friends.
Sit down,
Hey.
Yeah, this is good. You know, these ones that Christina made up, they got a lot of reach. 3,000, 2,000, 1,100.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, the ones from
It was
today
hard
didn't get
to
so much
see.
because they were today.
If you're just looking at the post,
So
you don't see.
There
but
were
you can
8
see
who
people that
engaged
actually
with
saw it.
this guy. So there were some people who saw that. I think, yeah, so we should make up a thing in the next day or two and say, here, if you missed our meeting,
Mhm.
here's the main thing. We can give the whole thing. And then we could do and then we start making.
Yeah, here's a. Yeah.
How many do we have here? I counted 24. Did that count
I
right?
didn't count, sorry.
Oh,
Total people?
yeah,
Us too.
I counted us too. We're here.
I don't, yeah.
It was better than last time. Last time's wasn't too great.
I think I counted about 10.
Well, I counted the children. They're all part of the people who are there. So, yeah.
We got, we picked up 6 ITEs right there.
Great.
Yeah, and 3 volunteers.
That's good.
I'll hang on to these.
And Nicole, I know, is gonna talk to her groupies. She has a whole group of people who are interested in this. Just a lot of them were tied up. And I know I had several people who talked to me already and said they're interested in an archive.
Yeah.
Because they were tied up because of whatever. I mean, there was a track meet tonight or you're not gonna avoid all of that, so you pick a night.
Well, that's what's nice about it anymore, is you can actually do an event, record the event, and then still publicize it.
Yeah, exactly. I hope Steve changes his mind on that because I think he's losing reach when he decides he can only do his thing live, he can't leave an archive.
We can try to incentivize making the live event a big deal. And then you just share parts.
Right.
Oh, there's my wife.
I'm gonna ask me to ride. I guess the answer is no.
So,
No.
okay. Keep metal trays.
I don't know where they came from. Brian, do you know where the metal trays came
The metal trays? I don't know. No, that's not me.
from? I wonder if they,
It's not Christina either.
that's just like,
Did,
There's just walked out the door and didn't take them.
Quinn bring his, no, Quinn didn't bring his bottles in. He said, somebody take the bottles.
We got the cookies.
Cookies all take back. Yes, we kind of give them first.
but I take these and store them and then I bring them to our in.
Yeah, Fairhead is an excellent idea.
Yeah. All right. And that's water, there's things there somehow.
Yes, just outside.
I'll see you later, if it's all right.
Yeah, thanks. No, I think overall. No, I really appreciate this.
Yeah.
I think if we were to do a thing again multiple times.
Maybe, him being here and seeing our presentation. Maybe he will get up. Oh,
I don't, actually, to be honest, there's part of it that we benefit more by not.
yeah.
And he becomes sort of the independent guy.
Right.
He was on the old,
But if he can maintain that position at the same time, he's directing people to it. Right, yeah, then that's.
and yeah, his best would be, go look at these guys, it's right for you. Right around there.
Okay, you're pretty close. Yeah, I'm ready. Let's get. You're gonna be taking everything except.
I think so.
I know, wait, Bob, let me help you get
Will
voted
you
up.
take this stuff and report it?
Yeah,
Make it, we'll need to make a new spreadsheet for volunteers.
yeah. We don't have one already?
I don't think we do, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it in a while. Yeah, we did, I'll check that. Yeah, that's those. This is the box there.
Sure, take this back. It's full of charcoal. Just bring it